to Watches Tonight. This is the 1916 Company. I'm your host, Tim Mosso. Sid is on the switcher this evening. Guys, thanks for bearing with me yesterday. We had to skip our usual engagement, but we're making up for lost time today. Thank you for joining Watches Tonight. This evening, we are talking about green dials. They are dead, and I'm talking about what is next. We're also going to chat live, and I'm going to share your wrist shots tonight on Watches Tonight. Let me just make sure that our live stream is actually streaming and that you guys are in the chat box. I'm just going to cross my fingers here and hope this is actually working. So let's jump straight into our warm-up routine, which is always do me a favor and check out my Instagram account, Tim_Mosso. Always new content, always new watches. Some of my own, a few insights into the life and times of Tim Mosso, but mostly the best stuff we have in inventory. Often things that are entirely unavailable on our website itself. Looking into the live chat, let me see if I can get any of these guys visible. If I can see you in the live chat, I will assume we are actually streaming. So let me type welcome and see if that actually pops up here. I do not see it, but it looks like the stream is public, so I'm just going to go as though you are watching. Viewers chats number 1. Rick R. leads off with his Chopard Strike 1 Art in Time edition on an Alex crown strap. That is Rick from the Midwest, one of our longtime supporters and good friends. John V. impresses with his elegant 33mm platinum Audemars Piguet classic moonface, and in the background, his adorable rescue pup. Matt N. astounds with his Ulysse Nardin Sonata Cathédrale and Maserati Gran Turismo. I like them both. Both underrated, by the way. Danny N. of New York features a gorgeous Patek Antarctique Lanakai. Look at that dial, my goodness. Great watch, unbelievable dial. George P. of Vero Beach, Florida, introduces a rare and exquisite Vacheron Constantin Patrimony 20th anniversary, marking 20 years since the 2004 arrival of the Patrimony collection. We've got Jim M. of Florida showcasing the stunning Patek Antarctique Royal Onyx, a UAE special edition with an onyx dial and blue sapphire indices. If you can't see them, they are incredible. And Matt R. drives his Audi Q8 with the incredible Vacheron Constantin Saltarello with JLC-based 1120 automatic. A man after my own heart, VC as well as Audi. I'm an Audi guy, always have been. I've spent a lot of money fixing Audis over the years. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see me. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over to my YouTube channel as you see it on the front end. And sure enough, there I am. And you know what the problem is in the end? It is the perennial non-functionality of the increasingly dysfunctional Safari web browser. So I go over to Google Chrome. Now I check my studio and I go into my live creator stream, and all of a sudden I see you guys, and there you are. Apple, you need to get your act together with that browser. Edward from Sweden, Soma R, Smoko, Jim Millett of the UK, HRM, Watch Out from Northern Virginia, Moto Gunner of Athens, Georgia, you're in the show. Calvin D, woohoo, Tim's back. I hope you're feeling good. I'm feeling okay. Bear with me because you're getting like 70% of the usual Tim Mosso. We got Jen Bennett, Kev Bennett there. We have Jim and 911 Euro Arca. We have David from Northern Virginia. Neil Benham saying this is the hardest program to find. You're not wrong. I had trouble finding my own stream. Rick on Watches. He's on the screen now. He's in the chat box. Greg I. Gordon Cricket and Dr. Zachary Smith staying up late in Munich, as is Romain from Paris and Fred. Asking what's next, brown dials? Well, guess what? It's not a dial, guys, but bear with me. Okay, green dial watches are dead. This is next. The moment you've been waiting for. I love green things. I've got my green glasses right there. I've got my green strap, green accented dial, Dan Reuter DR02. These are not the famous glasses. Those are actually down in my car. I still use them. I have the phone that I used to shoot the first 800 watch reviews. It's an iPhone 5, by the way. And I had to take it out of service because they retired all the 3G towers. I don't go through stuff too fast. And then finally, we've got the Tim Mosso Timeout Cap prototype. I'm still working on these guys, but if you want one, drop me a line at Mosso at the 1916company.com if you think this is a fun idea. Craig joining in. We've got Weed and Watches saying he's a Reuter fan. We got John Ainsworth from Italy staying up late. We got Sashi also from the UK joining live for the first time. I hope to make it worth your while. And then we got Clive from England. So, I do love green things. And even when it's in questionable taste or extremely bad taste, I still enjoy it and get a kick out of it. It's my favorite color, and you see a lot of it on this channel, after all. But the green dial trend has officially turned to the corner, and my God, can we go full screen on that? You type in green dial watches on Google, and this is what the image search returns. If you needed any more proof that we are past it, there it is, guys. I didn't even include the Google shopping piece. So, like the integrated bracelet sports watches that are still being launched as I speak, new additions to the green trend are like people arriving late to the party as all of the cool kids are leaving. Sure, come on in, but this thing is over. We've seen bronze cases, we've seen blue dials, we've seen salmon dials, we've seen integrated bracelets from everyone, and yes, green dials everywhere on everything, including my wrist. That's actually a good one though. And how do you spot what's next? There are people who dedicate their lives to trying to beat trends, and most of them seem to live on social media. But it's usually hiding in plain sight, and in this case, the next big thing isn't a dial or a case. No. It's a crystal. The exaggerated glass box form factor that we've seen recently. As with most trends, there's usually some precedent that predates the trend by so much as to have been ahead of its time and too early to actually benefit from the fad. With, for example, bronze watches, it was the 1980s Geraldgenta Jeffica. It was just too soon to cash in on the PAM 382's popularity. And in the case of bubble-style crystals, or glass box, as they call them now, that watch was the 2000-era Corum Bubble. Yep, Y2K. This was a Severin Wundermann comical sapphire riff on a 1950s Plexi dive watch from a brand we don't talk about. But the Bubble was a success, and I don't think we can call it influential, even though it did and does sell fairly well. No, the current glass box trend does not derive from this watch, which was just way too ahead of the curve. Without using the term, now again, we're talking about where we came from, but without using the term, companies as disparate as JLC with its Amvox series, and that was in 2004, and Longines with its Legend Diver in 2007, used bubble-like sapphires to echo vintage thermoplastic crystals, but they generally used terms like cambered or boxed sapphire at the time. And again, it was a vintage echo, not a styling theme in its own right. It wasn't style for style's sake. I looked, and I did research, and I dug, and in the watch press literature, the first appearance I can discern of the term glass box in a press release for a watch was a 2016 Alpina Sea-Strong Diver Heritage. And you can begin to see, if we can go full screen right there, that excessive domed profile that's there more for high style than for vintage evocative purposes. However, literally dozens of watches have been launched with expressly advertised glass box crystals since 2022, which seems to be roughly the point that the dam burst and these things started multiplying like rabbits in heat. So there was Tag Heuer's hard turn toward this treatment with the 2023 60th anniversary Carrera, and I really do think this is the single most influential glass box trendsetter. This is one of the Plank owners. This is sort of where it started. And that included the Tourbillon flagship, which, as you could see, was all bubble-like, all crystal, and almost no bezel. And that is a distinct takeoff from previous versions of the Carrera. Almost no bezel. And you can even see that the dial has been lofted to follow the inside of the crystal. This is now a watch that is being designed around its crystal rather than the other way around. In 2024, Jaeger-LeCoultre jumped into the trend headlong with the bulbous sapphire movement and a hand-in-glove sort of fit between dial and sapphire on the redesigned Duomets. The movements are mostly holdovers and sadly no longer in German silver, but the crystal and the case are a very different aesthetic, and you can see the glass box, that's what they're calling it, becomes a prominent feature of the design. Whereas was not when this model and this series debuted back in 2007. Actually, the Quantième Lunaire came a bit later, but the chronograph came out in 2007. So, last year, IWC took the glass box route to a GPHG Aiguille d'Or win with the Portuguese Eternal Calendar. We can go full screen, jump back one frame. There you go. You could see that that crystal is so huge that they can actually fix the minutes track inside of the crystal without placing it on the dial proper. This is a sign that the glass box is now dominating the design of the watch rather than the watch determining the scope of the crystal. Look how small the bezel is. It's almost gone, nearly invisible. We're verging on reticence levels of bezel, which is to say virtually none. And I maintain that more than any mechanical refinement with the Portuguese Eternal Calendar, this watch won the GPHG Aiguille d'Or on sapphire-driven aesthetics, where the boxing of glass included both the dial itself and the crystal above it. Look at that. That's a glass box crystal. That is a minutes ring that's fitted to the inside of the crystal rather than the dial, and then a dial that is white lacquer underneath crystal registers. This is now a watch that is all about the sapphires, and I think this will be incredibly influential, not mechanically, although it's impressive, but aesthetically, because you can duplicate this without platinum, without a six-figure price tag, and without a 45 million year moon phase. And make no mistake, the Swiss love to copy success. This will be the most influential watch of the next 5 years. I would say that the upcoming design influence of this GPHG winner cannot be overstated because it is so easy to make a sapphire relative to everything else that went into this watch, which requires a ton of watchmaking, engineering, industrial cred, and money spent up front on things like platinum cases from suppliers. You can make a bubble sapphire over a sapphire dial. A sapphire crystal costs maybe 30 Swiss francs, and a dial probably just as much. You're going to see a lot of watches that look like this at a lot less money. I would even say this, expect to see tons of emulators who try to cop IWC's winning look from this watch, and IWC, I'm not going to forget, you were first. People in glass boxes, however, shouldn't throw stones, so the Swiss will do what they always do, and shamefully rob each other's glass box crystal designs until the next trend hits, whatever that is. Expect to see tons of googly-eyed watches over the next 2 to 4 years. Jumping into the box here, we have Damon saying, Sashi just picked up a limited edition Pioneer dive watch with the Fume green, outstanding. Mark S, don't like the glass box because it eliminated the bezel. It does tend to do that on every watch where it features. SAP7, evening from England, Tim. And saying, always love the content, and I must get my watch on your box sometime. I must get my watch on your box sometimes. We got Mike W, greetings from Vancouver. We got Elia joining in from Ingolstadt, home of Audi. That and Audi Sport. Audi Sport is in a different city. I'll try to remember which one. Also, Sashi saying, underrated green watch, Moser Pioneer Center Seconds Citrus Green. Very true. That was a great one. Mark S. Tim, have you been making baseball references? You have been making baseball references recently. Will you please tell us about your baseball fandom? Yes, I cheer for the Pittsburgh Pirates in the National League and the New York Yankees in the American League. I'm a New York native. I started with the Mets, and when the Yankees took a chance on Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden in the mid-90s, I followed them from the Mets to the Yankees, and I've been there ever since. What else is going on in the box? Moto Gunner saying, I absolutely love the glass box. The Watch Lounge, checking in from Myrtle Beach wearing a Seiko 5 skin. I like that. Randy S., greetings from Augusta, Georgia. I used to live there when I was a little kid. And we got Martin S. Lauber. Howdy. Welcome, a man. Welcome, Darius. Welcome, THX. Shout out to the 1916 salesperson for getting me the watch I wanted. Omega Seamaster Professional 42 Blue. Love that wave dial and ceramic. Thank you for trusting our company. Spring Drive saying green dials will never die. True. They will simmer forever, but I don't think we will see the raging bonfire of the last few years. Wrist shots, number 2. I asked, you answered. Ezra D stages a spectacular combination of moon themes, past and present. Nicely done. Assad from California rolls on the sand after a late night at the hospital with his Rolex Sky Dweller and F-150 Lightning, which appears to have a few aftermarket mods. Gus G of Athens, Georgia, he's in the chat box, now he's on your screen. A highly cultivated wrist shot with his Christopher Ward the 12. Stefano R delights us with his 20-gram titanium Barons 20-gram, living up to its name. Stefano, well done. Jeff S and his Grand Seiko SBGJ 241 pay tribute to the immortal digital rain motif made famous by the Matrix film theme, so you can see where that nickname comes from. Send your wrist shots to Monday Mailbag at the1916company.com to see your pieces on these decidedly non-Matrix-like pixels. Curtis Arndt joining in from Southern California, a longtime friend of the show and one of our best viewed all-time collector conversations. Curtis, we have to film a follow-up. A topic near and dear to my heart, guys. Look, I know we're not going to hit the numbers we normally hit on a Monday, but stay with me. I'm not going to ask you to like or subscribe, but if you help me hit 300 concurrent viewers on a rare Tuesday show, you will make what is left of my week. A week that has been marred by vertigo, trips to the hospital, and generally feeling queasy. So, with all that said, near and dear to my heart, Jaeger-LeCoultre. It's not underrated. My assessment is it is undersold, and I'm going to explain this. I believe that now, with the return of superstar CEO Jerome Lambert, Jaeger-LeCoultre is in transition as a company, and it's appropriate to discuss where the brand stands after the last decade plus without Lambert, who originally ran the company from 2002 to 2013, but remember, right around 1996, he actually started with Richemont at Jaeger-LeCoultre at a lower level. So he's sort of a JLC lifer, coming back for a second term at the helm. The short answer here is that he has a lot of work ahead, but probably not in the way you would imagine. It struck me while planning the previous segment that JLC seems to be back in the discussion around internet watch circles, and while I normally welcome this, the premise seems flawed. A lot of folks have been saying JLC is underrated, and I don't believe it's underrated. I think it's undersold, and here's the difference. I'm not sure JLC is still the best kept secret it was during the 1990s and the early 2000s. The internet today means that new arrivals, and I mean brand new arrivals to the hobby, people who aren't even in junior high yet, have the same kind of information access, maybe even better, as collectors who have been in the business and the hobby since the 1980s vintage pocket watch craze, all of which is to say there are no secrets anymore. Especially since JLC is a Richemont brand that has nibbled at the six-figure production threshold in the last few years. I would say JLC isn't exactly Cédric Jonner, where I talk about the brand and people are authentically just like, who? Highly recommended, though. The question isn't whether people are aware of the JLC brand anymore, or even whether they find its products impressive, because they generally do. Even if they don't buy them, they generally do. No, the question is whether people look at JLC as something to be bought new or as a fantastic pre-owned value. And it's difficult to be both at the same time. The comparison I would make is to Jaguar cars, which is also very near and dear to my heart. My stepdad used to take me to the British car show at Quandra Hall on Long Island. Jaguar, Aston Martin, Lagonda, Rolls, Bentley, TVR, Lotus. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And they were all there, but Jaguar was always one of the best represented by collectors, and I was always impressed. Like JLC, Jaguar is a brand with a fantastic history, many worthwhile and enticing recent products, and a reputation for being boutique without actually being scarce the way brands like Ferrari, Lamborghini, or let's say Grubel Forsey and Urwerk would be in the watch world. But Jaguar has struggled to have that gotta have it factor with cars, even when they've been acknowledged as great looking, great performing, and far more interesting than the usual suspects from German and Japanese luxury brands. So sure, Jaguar cars are cool and special, and everyone knows this, just like JLC watches, but it's not a secret in the same sense that everyone knows JLC watches are cool and special. But Jaguar also has a reputation as a company whose cars you either lease only or buy used. That car right there, let's hold on that frame, cost $134,000 in pre-inflation 2012 money, and even $54,000 today is probably 10%, maybe 15% over market for what's among the coolest Jags of recent years. In French racing blue, no less. In the same sense, my JLC Platinum Reverso No. 2 Tourbillon cost over $140,000 in 2002 when it was new, but I bought and sold mine for $35,000 on the nose. It was everything I hoped it would be qualitatively. The experience was everything I hoped, but it should never have been that accessible to a dude buying pre-owned. Today, Jaguar is in the middle of a fraught rebranding. Can we go full screen there? Because we really kind of have to. Incredibly, these cars aren't a render of some kind. Those are physical prototypes. The Type 00 concept is a surreal thing that looks like an AI fabrication even amid physical surroundings. Again, not a render. That's a real car that drives. The question isn't whether a hard reboot is a good idea. I actually like the premise of Jaguar going back to the tradition of its Bentley and Rolls beating big cats like the Mark IX there. No, the question is how a company with a heritage like this decided to simply abandon it amid outright desperation to regain profitability. Frankly, if you're going to pare the entire portfolio down to a handful of super expensive, exclusive, hand-built and flamboyant products, there were some better starting points with real relevance to the company's heritage and a built-in market of fans who would pay. As CEO Jérôme Lambert knows, his golden age of JLC innovation was built on relatively affordable complications, preventing reverso overexposure by not overbuilding and over-iterating the line, and generally an engineering-driven appeal for people who couldn't imagine paying the Richard Mille ransom for things that are only putatively well-engineered. JLC was the real deal. Extreme Lab 2, if you want an example of that. JLC as a brand is sort of in a place where Jaguar was 5 to 6 years ago, but it should choose a different path. Now, both companies have big corporate owners with real money. So Tata is a huge international conglomerate that owns Jaguar Land Rover. And of course, JLC is owned by Richemont. JLC is the largest movement source within Richemont with the resources to do work for other companies within the group. And it does a lot of that under the table. So there's a lot of similarities there. Companies that are sort of niche, but have a lot of money with the companies behind them. I would also say that both companies have a product portfolio that's sort of at a crossroads and some tolerance from the corporate owner to reimagine or experiment as long as there's a real plan in place for the future. Both companies have unarguably great heritage and solid name recognition, but also questions about aftermarket outcomes that we'll discuss in a moment. I may see a used Jaguar as a great bargain, but the original buyer probably doesn't. One man's superb value is another's concern about buying the product new. But JLC has moved to shore up its warranty, which is now sort of the Richemont high-end standard at 8 years, and that's a great start if you want people to buy things new. Give them a really long warranty. And fewer watches sometimes is more watches from a production standpoint, if you catch my drift. See what you guys are saying. Moto Gunner opining, well said, Tim. By the way, we're up to 303 concurrent viewers for a Tuesday show, ad hoc at the last minute. Thank you very much. We got Original OC in the box. We got Jim Millett saying, I'm in UK. We got John A. from Wales. And we got some politics that I'm going to ignore. We got Tasty South saying Bremont make incredibly good watches. They've just had a bad re-logo, in my opinion. Interesting take. I mentioned Bremont soon. Matthew Somerville, hello from Brisbane, where you were getting up early, and I appreciate that. That Eternal calendar is getting me hot and bothered. You and me both. By the way, how much would you love to see a version of that with a tinted crystal? Think Rolex Glass Vert from the Milgauss, and you get the idea. Would that be hot or what? What else is going on here? And I think you'll see that. You'll see glass box with tinted crystals. We got Ilya saying, amazing 313. Guys, stay with me. Get me up to 350. And we got Michael F. saying, JLC Polaris Perpetual, take my money pre-owned. We got the Daleberry High from Aussie in Denmark. That's an interesting one. You're a man of the world. Geezer, Tim, thoughts on FP Journe Elegant? You need to know The production of that is not included in FP Journe's 1,000 watch a year pledge. Mechanical and quartz are separate. Also, the quartz movement is impressive, technically speaking, but also outsourced. Finally, to recommend it, it is the only Journe watch that I believe is safe for swimming, so it's got that going for it. So, some for, some against. I think it's a great watch to buy new. I think pre-owned, it's a bit of a stretch price-wise. And Jim Millett saying, love that mug, Tim. By the way, I will eventually be getting Tim Mosso branded stuff up and running. You could tell I'm terrible at commercializing and marketing myself because the last thing I get around to is branding and merchandising. And the first thing on my mind is always being here for you guys, and also trying not to be the most self-serving salesman on YouTube. Mark S. saying, Tim turned down Columbia for Dartmouth because they are green. True fact. I had to go early decision with one of them, and I actually was getting ready to go early decision for Columbia, Cornell, and Dartmouth. Visited all three. I like Dartmouth best. What can I say? They call them the Big Green for a reason. They've got this sort of non-specific thematic mascot. They're the Big Green. It's not an entity, it's an idea. And I think a college that has a thematic mascot rather than a literal one is exactly the kind of place for a guy like me. Okay, jumping back into our regularly scheduled program. So I said, one man's superb value is another man's concern when buying new. So JLC's production, we were talking about less watches being more sometimes, but in the big picture, JLC's production isn't as far removed from the Patek Philippe's and Audemars Piguet's of the world that it shouldn't aspire to that type of respect. JLC should be as respected as Patek, and it should be as respected as AP. And again, the volume difference with the ramp up of Patek and AP, it's not as big as it used to be. They're actually quite equivalent right now, and AP has said it wants to be a 100,000 watch brand, and I believe they'll get there. But JLC should never try to chase the kind of prices that Patek and AP have normalized with their buyers. JLC always needs to have a strong portfolio of steel watches and complications for the buyer looking below Holy Trinity price levels, but for a more exclusive and boutique experience than the Omegas and the Cartiers and the Breitlings of the world. That's where JLC lives from a pricing standpoint. Rolex has proved that you don't need a $30,000 price floor to be perceived as a blue chip property, and Cartier has proved that you can maintain second-to-none brand equity even when your bedrock products mostly retail below $10,000. And rebooting JLC, surreal Jaguar style, isn't necessary or desirable. The brand is much stronger right now than Jaguar is. JLC, unlike Jaguar, is a strong name that needs more focus to truly excel, whereas Jaguar, by contrast, is in survival mode. I mean, yikes. They're facing an existential crisis. Even the Google intellectual property ripoff function, also known as AI, understands this well. JLC, by comparison, is at a turning point after some shorter-term setbacks in volume and market success. These are small things that can be corrected. Jaguar is more like the Titanic turning to avoid the iceberg. So, there's one more key, and I think it makes a bigger difference than management-level watch chiefs really understand. And we're talking executive overview and priorities, but that's the fact that product literacy at the retail level is so important to the customer experience. JLC is the kind of brand that sells on substance and product merits. These are incredible watches. It's not Rolex or AP or Cartier or Patek, which have merit but mostly sell on name because of the value in the name. For years, Jaguar retailers have struggled to sell a meaningful story, to tell a meaningful story about the brand and its products. And that's led customers to walk over to the other side of the always twinned dealership that sells Land Rover SUVs. And look, that's a perspective shot with a vanishing point, but it's also a metaphor for the way these two brands sell these days. Once they go over to the Range Rover, the Land Rover, the Discovery, they go over to the Land Rover side, they go on an off-road test track, they see something like this on the wall, and yeah, Jaguar just lost a sale to an in-house rival. Jaguar has SUVs. That's not the problem. It's that Land Rover has a story that's far easier to tell and more compelling in sort of an accessible way. So, with all respect to Inspector Morse and company, Lions and Safaris beat geriatric detectives 10 out of 10 times in the showroom sales stakes. And JLC is stuck in the shadow of a bunch of Richemont sisters that are, like Land Rover, easy to explain in emotional and intuitive ways. Cartier is household name luxury. People who know nothing about watches know that Cartier is something special. Lange and VC are blue blood patrician luxury, as good as anything available anywhere. IWC Pilot's watches are for Walter Mitty types, and Panerai is for super Walter Mitty types, who may have extra male chromosomes. JLC, by contrast, is an intellectual sales pitch that only works when expert-level storytellers are present, when showroom staff tell a story with authority and insight and passion and details to the client. That only works if your goal is the Porsche dealership experience. Salesmen who take pride in knowing more about the car than the client does. And that's a big part of why you go to a Porsche dealership, get on a wait list, and pay a Porsche price. It's a pleasure to be a super fan of the brand, go in and still learn something. That is what takes the purchase from the level of an episodic purchase to an experience that yields lasting satisfaction. And I can tell you that is a rare treat for any car or watch buyer to meet a sales staff who's been there long term, does this for a living, lives, breathes, and eats the product, and will tell you something you didn't already know upon walking through the door. For JLC, this means that whether factory boutique or independent authorized dealer, sales staff training needs to be the best in the industry. JLC itself, its watches, and its clients deserve this. It needs to be boot camp level stuff. If everyone else is like, I don't know, let's say McHale's Navy, then JLC needs to be SEAL Team 6. Okay. CEO Jerome Lambert has been an ace everywhere he's worked with Richemont. And critically, his success at JLC and Mont Blanc was driven by creating great products that commanded respect, passion, and interest. In both cases, the watches seem to offer more features and value than you expected at any given price. And this is a big deal. Lambert is a product guy. He's not the type of guy you bring in to blow up a brand, Bremont style, and JLC doesn't need that in any case. He's not the type to relentlessly cut costs like Carlos Ghosn was when he was at Nissan and Renault. And Lambert is not the kind of guy who's going to come in and spend all the money on marketing. That type of executive is everywhere in the industry, but Lambert is a hardware guy. He's a product guy, and thank God for that. He's the right man for the job. His challenge is to ensure that JLC never makes too many watches, that they do sell on mechanical innovation, and that the watches are the kind of watch that people are inspired to buy. Watches that inspire collectors to be the first owner of any watch that JLC makes. Not looking for pre-owned value, but looking for primary value, something of lasting value, something that's worth owning first. All that, and he needs sales staff to be best in the world for product knowledge and brand mastery. Viewer wrist shots number 3. Eric O and his Audi. Greet Eric's first Jubilee bracelet Rolex here with Wimbledon dial. Congratulations, wear it in good health. Jonathan S. of Wales, UK dazzles with this mad one, Jean-Charles de Castelbajac in Fuerteventura. We've got Robert V. capturing a lively his and hers shot on the high seas with Panerai and Cartier. We've got Wesley G., who pauses an 18th anniversary celebration in Nashville for his and hers over drinks. We got David Yu, who attends the Eagles in concert at the still otherworldly Sphere in Las Vegas. Send your shots to moneymailbag at thewatchbox.com to see your pieces on these pixels. And what else is going on here? Grant P saying he likes that line, super Walter Mitty types, perhaps with an extra male chromosome. I'm just calling it like it is, guys. And that's before we even get into like Anonimo or Hublot Big Bang King powers. All right, jumping back in, let's chat for a few minutes, guys. I am dealing with this whole vertigo thing, so I ran out of steam writing this show and planning the program. So why don't you ask me some questions and I'll see if I can answer. Okay, so let's see what's going on in the box. Derek, Tim, what do you think today's new release by Breitling? A top time only. I would say most of the new Breitling releases have been pretty damn good. I would say I like this one. I do think that at the end of the day, Breitling probably still has too many watches. And as much as I like the new releases, I feel like they have something of a similar problem that JLC has, where they need like half as many SKUs. The website's difficult to navigate, the collection is sprawling and excessive. And at the end of the day, I respect Breitling like heck for what they've done, going more historically oriented, going smaller watches, paring back some of the elephantitis of the late Schneider era, but I still think there are too many watches out there and too many iterations. The Top Time is an attractive looking watch. I like that the green dial they did is almost marble. It's got sort of a marbled olive drab military look, which I like, but I think fewer watches is the answer for Breitling, and I don't think they need to iterate anymore. Pare down and then sell up. That's the way to go. We have question, how JLC heavy is your collection now? I have one JLC right now. It is my 1974 E877 Snowdrop Memovox Alarm. We have a question, Green by Moser will stay, more of a question comment from Elia. Green by Moser will stay beautiful in the long term. What do you think? Yes, because I think that their best ones, the citrus and the lime, are so unlike the other green dials that they'll go the distance. As for their regular cosmic green, I don't know if it's quite as distinctive, but the watches it's in are attractive. We have a comment right here. Fred, if you were going to recommend one German watch brand, what would it be? Cost no object, Lang und Heine. And if cost is an object, I would say probably Zinn, including Zinn's back catalog. What else is going on here? Paul Elder saying, Jesus, that's a sexy Memovox. VM, thoughts on Cartier Quartz? I like them. Mark S. Tim, why the Pittsburgh Pirates? I think they have a peerless tradition in the National League and a fan base that's in it for all the right reasons. A lovely traditional ballpark in a city that's genuinely into baseball. So all of that is appealing to me. I've been to their spring training too, I believe they're in Bradenton, Florida, and they bring back their old timers. Like you can see all of their great players at spring training as spring training coaches, and that's always the sign of an organization that has soul. The Yankees do that too, and the Red Sox do that too. Mason 1, Tim, what do you think about silicone hairsprings, given they can't be adjusted? They're disposable, frankly. I wonder how many of them in the future are going to have to be converted to some sort of metal. And then we have John Galt saying the Pittsburgh Pirates ownership is terrible. True, but that's true of about half the clubs in Major League Baseball. What else is going on? John Bennett, Ferrari double disqualified in F1. I know, right? And for 2 different infringements in the same race. Drama. I mean, really, what was Lewis disqualified for fractions of a millimeter on a barge board? Shouldn't happen, guys. On the plus side, I was glad to see Lewis show pace in that Grand Prix. Viewers shots number 4, Philip and Sven greet us from a night out in London with a pair of travel-friendly JLCs. Liam S. from Nantucket features his Islander Northport in a natural seaside setting. G. Mood of Tucson posts our most unexpected wrist shot of the night with Bulova, his Devil Diver, and Aventus by Creed, which is, I understand, a high-end cologne. That is a first for us. Chronometry and cologne. Let's make that a new theme for our show. Fergal B shines the spotlight on an uncommon Rolex Datejust turnograph with an engine-turned bezel. I love it. Spencer K captures an improbable chance meeting of 2 Panerai equations of time, just by chance, not planned, during a dinner out at a restaurant. Kerry B takes us home with his Tudor Black Bay 58 Navy on the trails in Virginia. Thanks to one and all, guys. Thanks so much for bearing with me on a night we were not supposed to have a show. Thanks to Sid for being limber on the switcher. He did a great job. Until next time, me and my green, Sid and my crew, time out.